What up? What up? What up? Happy Sunday or even Monday, depending on where you're receiving this audio. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Busted Coverage Podcast, right here on YouTube as well as on Spotify. Before we get going, we just want to thank you guys for tuning in. I'm your host, Nicholas Persampieri, joined always by my partners in crime, Matt Baywood and Cam Griffin. Cam, I believe, is our moderator for this week's episode. So he is going to go over the topics of discussion for this week. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. Turn on notifications. Follow us on Spotify. Let us know what you guys want to hear. With that said, Mr. Griffin, take it away.
Yes. Thank you, Nick. This week's topics are going to be a little different. I know we usually talk about games we've seen these past few days. I know a lot goes on during the week when we're not communicating, but we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to do some generic topics and have some conversation off of that. The NBA playoffs are real good right now. NHL playoffs are heating up, but we're going to take a little bit of a break from that and do something a little different. So we've had some controversial things happen the last few days. So our first topic is going to be: should the league, NBA, football, MLB, NHL, whichever one your heart desires, should they come out and say they missed a call if it's a game deciding call? That is going to be one of our first topics. Then we're going to go through and we're going to talk a little more. Should the draft, NFL, NBA, NHL, should it have parameters? Should we have a draft every year, every 2 years, only certain ages? Who knows? We'll see how that goes. We're going to look at our playoff formats and see who has the best playoff format, or does it need to be changed? And then our last topic is going to be social media. How has it impacted sports? For those of you who don't know, who may be a little older, like myself, 29, for the 10th time, but still 29. We have a generation of TV with no DVR, VHSs with separate recording, rewind features, no YouTube. Then we had YouTube, MySpace, Facebook, Twitter. The list goes on. How has social media impacted sports going from 0 to 100? I know this may shock some people, but there was a time where when you missed a game, you had to read the newspaper to figure out who won. That is no longer the case. So we will get into a little bit of that. But I'm going to start off because Nick is a Knicks fan. No pun intended. The other night, we saw them playing the Detroit Pistons, and there was a questionable call at the end of the game, which would have decided the game to an extent. The league came out the next day and said, hey, you know what? That was a foul. It should have been called. This isn't just a basketball situation. Matt, I know you're going to be talking a little bit about some stuff too, but let me throw this one out there also for you to think about while I'm talking to Nick. I know a few years ago the NFL took away the challenge of a pass interference call to where it can no longer be challenged. And then they'll come out the next day and say, oh no, that was a pass interference. We should have called it. So Nick, my question to you, start us off. Should the league come out, or any league come out after a game and say that they missed a call?
First, thank you for the question. Yes, I think they should come out and admit when they make a wrong call. One, from an accountability standpoint, and also, obviously, officials and umpires, they are human. They're going to make wrong calls. These things do happen. However, when they're at a pivotal point in the game, the time should be taken to review it and make sure that it's correct. Prime example, in the Knicks game, game 4, it wasn't a foul. No, I'm just kidding. It was definitely a foul. Josh Hart got away with it. We got lucky. It happens. It is what it is. Now, they can't go back and change it now, which stinks for the Pistons because now they're in Cancun instead of playing for a championship. But I definitely do think officials need to be held to a standard. If they make a mistake, they need to own up to it. I know in the NFL, basically they have like a rating system for officiating. And so the highest rated officiating crew that year is who does the Super Bowl. So they do have a little bit of like an evaluation process for like, making incorrect calls or um, like time of the game and all this kinds of stuff. So could that be put into the NBA and Major League Baseball? Maybe. Obviously, that would need a whole plan and procedure. But I will say this though, and this will be my last point. I think a lot of questionable calls or whatever, it does have to do with ratings. And like, so for example, um, Major League Baseball wanted to try to shorten the amount of games. They introduce a pitch clock. They may want to pick up the pace of the game a little bit. I feel like a lot of people's gripes with the NFL or with baseball is that the games take too long. So maybe in a way to speed up the games, maybe they might miss a call or two, or Vegas is influencing a lot of sports, right? Because these leagues are getting a percentage of that money coming in. Not to say that it's rigged, but it has an influence on things. So, um, do I think there should be accountability for wrong calls? Absolutely. The Knicks is a prime example. Knicks Pistons should have went 7, but it went 6. So hey, it is what it is. But I think we'll see more of it, especially when the games get tighter. So, but yeah, so I would say yes, absolutely. They should come out and say they got something wrong because it's only going to push the quality of the games forward.
Okay, I agree. I do like hearing that they did make a mistake. I think so much today people don't admit when they've made mistakes, and I think that's kind of the mentality of a lot of people. Sometimes it's my way or the highway, or it's whatever I say goes. And no, we're inhuman. We make mistakes. Matt, let me ask you the same question, and it can be football, Major League Baseball, NHL, NBA. Should the league come out and admit that that the refs may have made a mistake on a game-winning play slash possession?
All right, so I got actually a few good points here. Yes, the answer to the question is yes. They need to be held accountable and be able to admit that in front of, or at least the league should address it like they did for this most recent NBA game, Knicks versus Detroit. My my point towards refs is I feel like they should be watching the same amount of film, excuse me, the same amount of film as an NFL player does in a weekly scouting report and preparation for the next game because um they need to see where they can be better, where maybe they're missing something so that they can improve, just like players rewatch the same play over and over and over to figure out like, oh, maybe should I have stepped a different uh at a different point or cut here instead of there, made this type of cut instead of the cut that I just made, football speaking wise. um just to get in a better position, even just to be able to see something better, because you need to have some sort of athletic build or ability to be able to keep up with NFL, NHL, NBA players. NBA not so much, they can walk up and down the court a bit, but the NFL, like you've seen refs haul ass up the field after receivers, So I think they need to be watching film. I think they need to be going to yearly classes. I mean, you got to go through a whole rigorous training and get governmental approval to become a nationwide ref. So might as well keep up with it because it seems like these refs are going in there vastly unprepared and it's changing outcomes of games. And it's the same thing every year that we're discussing, and there's really no improvement. On the point of the NFL having the pass interference call, I was upset that they took it out, but I understand why they did. They wanted to keep the games, sped up, like Nick was pointing out. However, my new idea for this is maybe within like the final 4 minutes of a half, if there's a game in it, like one score, not necessarily having to be a one score game, But like in a situation like that where it's going to decide the game or be a huge outcome, that you should be able to challenge one call after a 4-minute period. The NHL also does something interesting. And I saw this a few days ago, which is why I'm bringing it up. It was in the Florida Panthers Tampa Bay Lightning series game. I think it was game 4. Florida comes across the line. They're they came across the line offsides. The ref missed the call. They end up scoring like a minute and a half after. Tampa knew that they were offsides. They challenged it, even though it was a minute and a half ago. That goal got overturned because it was offsides originally. You know, I mean, that's an honest call. You know, if there's a touchdown that's made or an interception that's made, and they go to replay to confirm already that it was every turnover and touchdown is reviewed. So if there was a foul on that play, why not address it then? Then you don't have to have the need for the challenge. But if there's a scoring play and there's blatant pass interference or something missed, then why don't you just address it then and there while you're addressing the fact that it's a touchdown? Why aren't you or an interception? Why aren't you determining whether it's offensive, defensive pass interference at the same time? You could see it all at once. The NBA is a little bit different. That ref was right there. I don't know what he was looking at. He must have been FaceTiming somebody because he missed that call right in front of his face. So the NBA, I don't have a solution at this time, except for the fact that they just need to watch film, get in a better position. I mean, he couldn't have been in any better of a position for that particular call. But there's only a handful of refs in an NBA game, so there's 5 players. I think there's only like three refs that I see regularly. So, and I agree with Nick's point on the rating system being brought into all sports. It probably is, but if it isn't, then it should be brought into other sports especially for the biggest games in the playoffs, because this is just an amateur mistake that happened in Game 4. Could have very well determined the series, let alone the game.
Yeah, and that's the sad part about that is that the Pistons lost in 6.
Yeah.
Right? 6 instead of getting a chance for a Game 7. I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was 6.
It was 6.
Yep.
They lost in 6 instead of getting a chance for a Game 7. And that's the sad part. Game 7, you have nothing to worry about. You go back to New York, okay, but at least you earned it. It's interesting. You both brought it up, and I think basketball and football, to an extent, more basketball. You see a lot more ref reviews because of the differences in a 2-pointer and a 3-pointer. I like the fact that they'll go back and review whenever to see if it was a 2 or a 3 first commercial break, and then they'll adjust the score correctly. You don't really get that in hockey because all goals are worth 1.
Mm-hmm.
Not really a football thing because a touchdown 6, and they don't really review something that happened before, unless it's a penalty. They'll go back and review some of that stuff. But that's it. No real on the fly game action. And we're not novice. We all play sports at some level. Whether you're watching us and you play kickball or whatever sport you may have grown up playing, errors happen. Mistakes happen. It's part of the game. But when the mistakes come at the end of the game, I think that's where we start questioning it. That's life. How many times we play a sport and it's game point and now every foul is being called. The game's watched from every angle. We can look in these stadiums and know that the dude from the fourth row in the 600 section threw a bottle on the court. We can see that because there's so many cameras. But we can't see if someone gets hit with all eyes on one person. And that to me is the interesting topic. We touched on it a little bit. Matt, I'm going to start with you on this one. I don't need exacts. You may not even know off the top of your head. But do you feel the bigger the game, the bigger the mistake, we should be punishing these refs if the call is blatantly not called?
I'm gonna say yes and no.
Mhm.
Refs have discretion on letting players play, and if the game is a rougher game like that Knicks game was,
Mhm.
I think that that's situational. But if it's a game like typically the Chiefs play where every call is called and then they don't call something, yes. But if it's a game where the ref is like letting people play and then all of a sudden he has a ticky tack call, or that ticky tack call could really decide the game. It's yes, I think that it should be based off of the way that game is going. Should it be consistent across the board? Yes, but all refs are different, and there's 16 games going on at the same time, or 16 different sets of refs sometimes. So I think it's situational based, in my opinion.
Do you think that I'm trying to think? I think it's the NFL where the booth can review it. It might be college. Where the booth can review it even if the refs don't call it because they're watching. They have different angles on stuff. Do you feel we should bring that into sports? Let a third party buzz the referee and review a play?
They did. I mean, the NFL sometimes has to wait for a call back from New York to decide the call.
Yeah.
So, yes, I agree that that's a thing. Because if the ref wants to make sure he gets it right, he gets it right. Especially if you already have, if it's one of those reviews that goes into commercial break, why not get a call from New York or wherever your league is based? You know.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm with you. No, I agree. Nick, what do you think? Should we be punishing refs even though your team just benefited from one?
I mean, yes and no. The punishment is they don't get to call the bigger games. At least like in the NFL, for example, the highest scoring officials call the biggest games. That's completely merit based and experience based. So I think there are systems in place for it. I mean, I don't really know as much as like hockey, or I feel like hockey, they like almost never make bad calls. So, but it's interesting.
they do. They miss
For example,
penalties, but the it's again
they also let
discretionary.
them fight. So you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, we missed a trip, but we'll let you punch him in the face. I think that's a fair exchange. To be honest, I would rather see a fight than a penalty. And I think the casual sports fan, they don't want to see penalties called or a foul fest in basketball. Like,
No.
and I think part of it too is players are playing for the fouls. Like wide
Mhm.
receivers are playing for pass interferences and illegal contacts and this and that. Basketball, they're playing for the foul. They're trying to get the calls. They're selling and flailing their arms and stuff. The
LaFlop.
most the vast majority, yeah, exactly. The vast majority of fans don't want to watch that.
No.
We want to see people play and compete, and hey, sometimes it's catch an elbow. Sometimes it is what it is. Be a man. That's why I like watching hockey sometimes. Hey, you don't like something? Go punch him. All right, whatever. Referee said, all right, you threw your punch. Go away now. But I mean that's obviously a joke. But in terms
Maybe
of, I
not.
mean, maybe doctor game check, right? I mean, if an NFL player gets ejected, right, they get fined and all this stuff. So maybe dock their pay. I mean, I don't know. I guess that'd be the only other thing they could do.
Send him back to
But I
class.
mean, yeah, exactly. It'd be more training and um, I think there's already a system in place for whoever calls better games gets
Hmm.
to call the big games. So that's just how it goes.
I think as fans, and I say this in the most respectful way to maybe the casual person listening, so let me finish my thought before anyone jumps on me. I think as fans of sports, we're hypocrites. We want our cake, but we want to eat it too. And at one point, we want every call called because why not? But at the same time, why would we call that? It's a key point of the game. You don't make that call at that point. Then we want no calls called. As a fan, we all talk about a happy median, but then when it comes to the people we cheer for, it's very hard to find that line. So I just think that's very interesting. And yeah, do I think we should punish the refs? They are graded every game. I think there does need to be some form of maybe punishment. The term is too hard, but I don't know if reprimand's really the better word either, but some point of coaching, we'll call it, when major calls are missed. The NFL, same thing. It's 2025. We have cameras on every angle, every part of the court, field, ice, whatever you want to call it. There's not a part of the ice or the field you cannot see. But yet we still miss calls, blatant calls. And I get freedom of movement, freedom of the game. Hockey's a little different, I guess, because Nick's right. You can just punch somebody and move on to an extent. We can't do that in every sport. But staying out of those three sports we did talk about, I remember there was a time, Nick, I'm going to ask you on this one because I think you'll know where I'm going with this or where I'll remember it. A few years back, pitcher was throwing one pitch away from a no-hitter. And was it the ump? I don't know what the ref is called. I think it was the umpire messed up and called it a hit when it wasn't. Lost his perfect game.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You remember that?
That's Galarraga. Yeah.
Now,
it was clearly out when he called him safe. Yeah.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, and if I'm wrong, please tell me. He realized the error of his mistake and came out and admitted he made a mistake after the game.
Yes.
As I believe there was an interview of him crying because he felt really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, I think the kid came out 2 weeks later and threw a perfect game anyway, or something like that, or no hitter a few games later. But in that sense, if he didn't come out and say he made a mistake, would we punish him? Because that would be, or should he receive additional coaching with fines? Maybe we'll call it that way. Being that he took something away that was a big deal that you messed up on. What do you think? Just to get some baseball clarity in this.
Well, it's interesting because of that missed call, it led to Major League Baseball adding in, new reviews for, replays and making calls that, safer out or, fair or foul, things like that. So I think in the long term, it did good for the sport because it led to, the game being improved. In that right in the moment, it could have been you could have considered it like one of the worst calls ever made because a perfect game in baseball is so rare, despite there being so many games. And Major League Baseball has been around since the 1890s or 18 whatever.
Yeah,
so
it's a long time.
To think that there's only been so many, and the fact that the dude was clearly out, and he cost him a chance at history. So
Yeah.
in that, you feel for the umpire. He made a mistake. It does happen, but in the end, it led to the game being improved. So, it sucks for Galarraga, but Galarraga handled it with class. So.
Yeah, I remember he came out after. I remember he came out and he was giving the ump a hug and stuff because he felt bad for him. I mean, this dude, for those of you who don't know or remember, this dude received death threats after missing that call. So that's kind of where we're going with some of that. Matt, what do you think? How do you think MLB has used we've made a mistake and come out and apologized, or have there been scenarios where you feel that that should have been called and it wasn't called, even after a challenge?
It's more balls and strikes, in my opinion, because there's some umpires that'll just, let balls practically hit the dirt and they'll still call it a strike.
Mm.
Those are more my issues rather than the base judges. Uh, the- Hitting the base, like that one was a very clear call, but there are bang bang situations in that, areas of the field where the runner's sliding into the base or diving into the base or running into the base, and the ball gets there a fraction of a second before or after. So I mean, being that in that position to make a call there is very difficult. Similar to the umpire behind the plate, however, you kind of got to understand the 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 box, and if you're going to extend it, which some refs will, you could watch tape and see that certain refs give a full like ball length of leeway when it comes to the strike zone, and I just think that specific area needs to be addressed and fixed and be consistent league wide. That's not something that you could just have discretion on, where you're going to have a ball and a half, two ball width outside the strike zone and still call it a strike. It doesn't help. It does nothing for the players, because then they just start, resenting certain umpires that they have to deal with. So those umpires should be fined.
I like it. And obviously, to sum up what we've been talking about, obviously their mistakes are part of the game. We know that. No one's perfect. Bigger the stage, the bigger the issues are magnified, and I think that's where it is. There's a lot of games that happen every day where there are no issues. So I don't want people thinking that, every ref is bad. No, that's not the case. It's playoff time. So now the issues that we've seen are now magnified. And that's where the question has come from. I'm going to move on because I have some things I want to bring up on our next topic, because I've been with Nick and Matt throughout the week, and Nick has seen me during the NFL draft, and I have a lot of questions on NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA. When it comes to the draft, I feel a certain way, but my opinion will come out later. Matt, I'm going to start with you on this. You can take whichever major league sport you want to an extent. Their draft. Should there be parameters on their draft? For example, should players have to be a certain age to enter the draft? Should they be allowed to, I didn't get drafted one year, should they be allowed to go back? Should we have criteria for kids being in the draft? Or should we not have a draft every year? You can take it in whichever direction you want. How do you feel? Should the draft of whatever sport you choose have parameters? Yes or no?
Okay, so this when you had shot the question over to me over
Mm-hmm.
text, I was leaning in a completely different direction.
Oh, how are you leaning?
I didn't know that you were going to go this route, which I do have an answer for. I'm glad you asked this particular one, but I wasn't sure if you were going to be asking team wise, like during the season, like should the end results of their record, how should that be? Like if there should be a lottery in the NFL or something like that.
You know what? I'm going to write that down, because I like that. We're going to go that way too, actually. I like
Okay.
that. That's a good one.
All right.
Maybe you should come up with questions now.
So I'll address what you asked me specifically. I don't care personally about the age, but if you're electing to go to the draft and you don't get drafted, now you're going undrafted if you go to that particular sport.
Yeah.
I don't think you can or should be able to elect twice. Because if you weren't ready, you weren't ready. And You're going to have to prove it a different way. You should have stayed in college another year if you were that young. That's the one area I think NIL will help with, is players possibly staying a year or two later than they originally would have.
Mm.
But parameters for the draft, I mean, I like the every year format. I think teams need it.
Mhm.
Every year there's veterans on teams that retire, and the draft is the way to get younger. You can't just You can, but there's only so much free agency deals that you can make with veteran players because they demand more money. It's a cheap
Mhm.
it's a cheap way to get very valuable picks and let them earn their way to their paycheck and play at their hardest. So in terms of that, I like the way that it's set up currently.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna jump in real quick before we go to Nick on this, because I'm the other way. Believe it or not, I do not like having a draft every year. I will take basketball for an example because I know every sport does it differently. Um, I believe hockey and baseball, MLB and NHL. I believe, and if I'm wrong, someone correct me, but I'm 90% sure I'm not wrong for some of them. I believe you can be drafted and stay in school. I'm pretty sure you can. I feel like we've seen that. If I'm wrong, someone let me know, but I feel you can be drafted. So to those, I actually like that idea. Um, I have no problem drafting players and letting them go back to school and develop. If they're not going to play right away, then what does it matter?
I think that's the case until they sign a professional contract, Cam.
Exactly. I think your draft, they have your draft rights until you sign,
Yep.
and I think, and I like that idea. I think that's a great idea. It lets these kids get better, and then when they sign their contract, obviously they can't play anymore because it's not amateur. But I'm a huge fan of that. I think every sport should figure out a way to make that happen. To be honest, since we don't have that, I don't like players leaving every year of college or for the NBA. I think it's watered down because you get kids who go for 1 year, they think they're hot stuff, and then next thing you know, they're in the G League or they're overseas or they're just not playing. It could be bad advice. It could be whatever you want, however you want. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of teams trading picks that are 6, 7 years out. I think that's a cop out. I don't think it works for the sport because it could go any direction. You could have a dynamite team, and then in 7 years, when your team should be getting older, now you've got all these first round picks. I don't think it works. You shouldn't be able to trade that far out for players.
The only reason why the NBA is able to do that is because there's 2 rounds. So
But again,
the NFL, it's different. I don't think you have the ability to trade like a 2027 or a
yeah,
2028 first round pick. You might be able to, but
yeah,
I mean, it's less
and
impactful in the NFL than it is in the NBA.
exactly. And well, you have like 50,000 rounds in the NFL too. But that is neither here nor there right now. But my question, that is my issue. Um, I hate it. I don't think a draft every other year would fix it either. But I would rather see one every other year where the talent pool is 1 to 60 is really good, than every year where we're questioning people after the lottery. Yes, you get players in the second round who end up being stars, but those are those same players who would have been stars anyway, most likely, if they went out the following year. Maybe even would have been a higher pick. You don't know. I don't believe it should be every year as of this point. I am happy you cannot go from high school to college to the NBA. I think that was ridiculous. I think there's only a handful of players who actually have that ability and that we say, wow, don't belong in college, but the list is few and far between. It might be 1 or 2 kids a year, and that's it. Not worth having a draft every year for. I get why we do have it. Again, this is a personal opinion, but I don't think it's needed in basketball. NFL, I mean, if you could have a draft every few months, would be great. 6 rounds, crazy. Is it 6 or how many was it? 6?
For
Matt?
the NFL,
7.
is
Yeah.
7 rounds.
7. 7 rounds. I mean,
Okay,
it is. What it
so then my
is
question
what it
is Cooper Flagg basically played college as a high schooler and is
Yeah.
now declaring for the NBA draft. How do you feel about that then?
Well, like I said there's a handful, maybe 1 or 2 kids a year who can do it. Other than that, it's not worth it. If I think the better question is, outside of Cooper Flagg and Zion Williams, who was the last one?
Probably LeBron.
So what is this one and done? How many one and dones
Oh,
don't?
LeBron went straight from high school, but
Yeah.
one
So
and
that's
done,
my
I
point.
can't think of
Yeah.
many
I mean,
off
there
the top of
haven't
my head.
been too many that we feel like, oh, we have to change it, and now we get these kids coming in after 1 year, and some of them are stars. I'm not saying they aren't, but a lot of them aren't going to be stars until our current stars are gone. And I think that's where we need to look at this. The NBA is an aging group. But as technology has brought us, and you can go to the doctor now and pay for a new body, basically, you can play longer. So those spots where you see people falling off rosters to make room for other people just isn't coming left and right. You can go to a G League game and see the who's who of former NCAA champions because there's no room for them in the NBA. But we're going to have a draft the following year and just keep the process going. I don't think it works. The NFL, 7 rounds, half those people won't make a roster. Or they'll be on a practice squad. Not the worst decision, I guess. If that was your dream to be a practice star, go for it. But how many times do we go through? You can go through ESPN website and then go to NFL trades or transactions, I should say, and then a week or two after preseason, how many people are cut or moved to the practice squad? It's the business of sports. I get it, but I really think we need to look at some of these drafts the way we have them. Nick, before I go on more tangents, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Baywood. What do you think? Should the draft of your sport, your choice, should there be some sort of parameters or qualifications for kids entering?
In terms of declaring for the draft, I think I might take a different approach. Not necessarily a different approach. I think once you declare, you get one go. If you don't get picked, I think if you were to go undrafted, then you go undrafted. I know you mentioned like baseball and hockey. In baseball, the team can own your draft rights until you sign your contract. But what's interesting is they can re-enter another draft after their junior year of college or when they turn 21, which is interesting. I think that if we let kids go back to school, and that's just really any sport, then that team owns your draft rights until whatever parameter gets hit that you redeclare. But that team also has the right to rescind it. They could say, you know what, 8 months from now, kid could tear his Achilles. You know what, never mind. We don't want this kid anymore. I think a team should have the right to do that too, right? Because it's all an evaluation process. If the kid's going to stay in school or whatever, we have your draft rights. We are anticipating you developing further and then coming to our team. If that doesn't happen, then they should say, you know what, never mind, because they didn't sign a contract.
Yeah.
Right? That's the business of sports. At the same time, right, players have the rights to decide, right, I think I'm going to stay in school for a year but the thing is, they're still drafted. Like if you declare and you go undrafted, then that's it. You're an undrafted free agent. You can't go in the draft multiple times unless you're drafted the first time. So I think players could have the option to stay in school if they want. So like, for example, say Travis Hunter Now, I don't think he had any eligibility left, but let's say he did. And Jacksonville traded up, took him at 2. If Travis said, yeah, I'm going to stay at school for another year, that's fine. But Jacksonville retains his draft rights. So when he's done in college, he goes to the Jaguars. That's how that goes. I don't think that will happen. I think the thing that they should change about the NFL draft first is the amount of time to make a pick.
Thank you.
In the
It should
first
not
round,
be-
because the rest of the rounds go pretty quick.
Personally, I think it should be reduced to 7 minutes and 30 seconds. That's just me. But, and then day 2, you make it, 5, and then the rest of the draft or like first 2 rounds, you get 7.5 minutes, and then the rest of the draft, you get 5. Because you have all off season to make trades and move up and all this stuff, and they're still doing it on draft day. It's amazing that trades happen so fast on day 3 of the draft, yet they take forever on night 1. So,
well, night 1 is more risk, and also there's certain players that are on the board that they didn't expect to be on the board at that time, so that's where that comes in.
Right. Oh, I know, but I'm just saying it could take 23 seconds to trade 4 different draft picks to move up 2 spots. It's funny how they can work deals out that quickly.
In the first round, too, the issue is some teams have the pick in right away, and they still wait the entire 10 minutes to say it.
Yeah, and I think
pick is in. Get Goodell, get his perks, get his drinks, get him out there, say the pick. Don't waste our time.
No, I agree.
We're really waiting for a card to be printed out with the name on it these days. It can't just pop up on the podium. Like what?
We should get a digital commissioner to make the announcements.
Hey, the Monday Night Raw did it at one point.
Maybe 2050.
No. Maybe.
But
I think we could be alive in 2050.
What?
They will send out but today's Star Wars Day, right? Who's the guy? I am not a Star Wars guy. Palpatine? Is that his name?
Oh.
The guy who's like, right, that's Roger Goodell. Him and Jerry Jones.
I love that. May the force
damn
be.
But also one other thing. I know you said one sport, but I was thinking about this.
Whichever you can.
I think the NBA should introduce a 3rd round to the draft and use it as a way to give out 2-way contract designation to 3rd round picks. But that's just my opinion. That way you open up the talent pool so you can get more players. And if you want to give them 2-way contract designations, that's what they get, so they can play G League and NBA.
Well, you're not doing that now for players, so I don't know if a 3rd round is going to help that. Again, drafting players for the G League, to me personally, is the same as not drafting a player and him signing with a G League team.
Unless you wanted, you could use the 3rd round to pick the 3rd round could be the ones that get picked and designated. Those
are your 2-way designations, I guess.
You get to hold the rights for your 3rd round pick for a possible future player, until the parameters are hit. Introduce it that way, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, so
because there's people that are graduating college and they're entering the draft. They get drafted, let's say the 1st round. They get drafted the 2nd round. You get a 3rd round pick. And then you could pick a younger kid that is told to remain in college until he meets some sort of eligibility, like Nick was saying before.
Well, the funny thing about the NBA and its draft, and I think this is where I love the idea of what the NHL does and what MLB do. I love signing a kid, letting him stay until getting his draft rights, and then letting him stay where he is until he signs. Now, fun fact, the NBA does the same thing. But they do it with international players. How often do we watch the draft and we find out, oh, they have the rights to this player, but he's not coming over because he's not ready yet. But once
Didn't they
you
do that with
sign-
Ricky Rubio?
Ricky Rubio did it. Luka did not. Ricky Rubio did it. I vaguely think Rudy Gobert did it.
I was going to say Rudy.
Bogdan Bogdanovic did it. A lot of international players. Rudy Fernandez, name throwback for some people, did it. A lot of the foreign players will stay playing overseas for a year or two, build up their body, and then come to the NBA. I have no problem with that. I think that's great. I think you're not ready to come here. Continue, work yourself out, and then let them call you when you're ready. Come over when you're ready. I wish we could apply that to the younger generation in college. Your body's not ready for an 82 game season. We'll sign your rights, or we'll keep your rights. Take the next year. If you can't come to the team now, take the next year, get bigger, and call it a day. I was not 100% on board with the G League Ignite, but I like the concept that they were doing as a bridge to get players ready. I don't know if there's ever going to be an exact way for it, but those are my feelings on the draft. I'm glad to see where you guys feel. I don't know about a third round in the NBA draft, but hey, who knows?
Cam's trying to take away rounds, let alone add them.
That's why I did. If you could have seen my face when Nick said a third round, I had to mute the mic. I was like, "What the hell?" But complete opposite of what I'm trying to do. No, but I could see where a third round could work with two-way contracts. I would like to say go to a G League game. There's a lot of names of players you'll know because we watched them in college. There's no room for them. It was a saying, hate saying it, but the G League was like a death sentence. You go to the G League, very few players come out of it. The two-way contract at least helps them get out, but it's not a guarantee. So that's where I feel on that. Matt brought up a good point before. Team's record deciding their draft position. Matt, I want to hear where you were going with on that, because that is a good point. I have some thoughts on that myself, because there are some teams out there that have really good draft position in some sports, but they're not bad teams. They just had a bad year. But where were you going to go with it? Let's hear it. I'm excited for this.
I was going to go two different routes. Number one was the Tank for Tua situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at least the bottom four record-based teams should be in a lottery, because there was many years where Cleveland had the first overall pick as well. And I think it brings a little bit more honesty to the game, and that you could still end up with the first over, or maybe 5 teams, 6 teams, maybe even, but you have the chance to get the first overall pick if you're in X many positions that are decided. Let's just say 5 or 4 for this example. And you still have to win your games. Like, you still have to try to win your games out. You can't just tank, because you don't know where your draft position is going to be. You could be third overall. You could be fourth overall. You could be sixth overall. You don't know. I think bringing in a lottery would spice up the NFL a little bit, and not have bottom dwelling teams staying bottom dwelling teams, so that they can get the player they want in the draft.
Yeah. Do you think maybe some sort of like average for maybe 2 years gets you a better draft position? Something like that, maybe? Because let's look at it this way.
It's tough, because there's teams like the Steelers, my favorite team, that are just mid. And they're going to be mid forever, because we don't get any top draft picks. So I'm not saying that those mid teams should move down, but teams that are below average, that stay below average, and they're not doing anything good with their picks, because we got, Chicago drafts a quarterback every other year and none of them work. So they're going to stay a
Yes.
bottom dwelling team. But that doesn't mean that they should be, getting the first overall pick and getting another shitty quarterback in their shitty system every year.
Yeah.
So I guess it would give a chance. It would be a better chance to cycle teams into the spotlight rather than, we already know who it is going to be and who's tanking the season and who's just giving up. No, you still got to play. Otherwise, you could lose your pick.
So let me ask you this question, because I think this is where I was kind of questioning some of it, and the reason I don't kind of like the way it is. Let's say, and it's not out of the realm of what I'm going to say. So for those people who think it is, it's really not. Actually, let's use the Jets. The Jets had a decent when they first signed Aaron Rodgers. They had a good defense, correct?
Yep.
They had good receivers, correct?
And improved throughout the regular season, yes.
Yep, and improved. And this isn't just on you. So Nick, feel free to, if you're muted, to unmute and answer some questions too. The Jets had a good quarter. They had a pretty decent special teams. They had good players all around, right? The team was built to win now, to an extent, right, Nick?
Correct.
So my question to you is this: based off the way the draft goes now, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles in the first game of the year. Would that have warranted them getting the number one overall pick and drafting a franchise quarterback with a great team for a fluke?
In my opinion, no. Because they still ended up, I think, with the.
I know they didn't. I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, your season expectation now has changed because you were a Super Bowl contender. Now you're not. Fortunately, Zach Wilson played better than people thought. But if you take that out of the equation and let's say you just bombed, would that justify you getting the number one pick in the draft with a team that's basically ready to win versus a team who really needs that pick? What do you think?
Personally, I would say no. Um, Another example would be the Giants. They won a playoff game with Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the 2023 season, the expectation was they're going to go back to the playoffs and he's going to take the next step and all this stuff. And we all saw what happened. So I don't know if so. You could, because I guess you could say the same thing. Should they have gotten the first pick? They lost Saquon. They lost this one. They had these expectations. Boom, boom, boom. So to me, I would say no, based on that kind of like the hope factor. Like I understand where they're in a position to win and their quarterback goes down. And I hate to say you can get a quarterback, but we've seen quarterbacks get taken third round, fourth round, and be perfectly suitable. So should they get the first pick? I don't think so. I do agree there should be like a lottery system because hockey has a lottery system. The NBA has a lottery system. I think it would just be more transparent if the NFL did. And I agree, it would limit the teams just tanking all the time. Like there should be an incentive to try to improve your roster and your organization. But I don't think just giving a team a top pick because of they had lofty expectations and fell short. I don't think that's warranted to a
No.
degree.
Yeah. And again, for those people who were thinking that that's not going to happen, we just saw it happen to an extent. And ACL injuries, knock on wood, are very common in athletics. Sorry, people. It could happen. It does happen. So that's the only reason I brought that up. Matt, what do you think?
First overall pick, definitely not. However, if it's a career-ending injury, I feel like that should warrant a compensatory pick. That's known to happen from the NFL. they get compensatory picks for free agent losses
Mhm.
in, I think it's the next season. So if like we lost, a decent or top free agent in this past off season, it wouldn't affect this year's draft. I believe it'll affect next year's draft. We'd get
Okay.
a compensatory pick. So it can't be like just a shock, like, oh my God, they get an extra third round pick, those picks are also lined up 3 through 7. So you can get a 7th round pick, you can get a 4th round pick, you might get a combination depending on the player, but those top tier rounds, I mean, you know, teams deserve those picks and don't just deserve to have them handed out compensatorily, if that's even a word. But where I'm trying to go is, if it's career ending, maybe incorporate a compensatory pick. But if it's just like a rehab thing where Aaron Rodgers came back and stunk up the joint this past year, no, that doesn't
Mm.
warrant a first round pick at all. Or first overall for that matter. Absolutely not. I think it should be lottery based.
I'm just curious, and for people out there, not to put you on the spot, only if you know off the top of your head, and I'm just asking out of curiosity, what would a career-ending injury be? An example.
Ryan Shazier's like back situation where he tackled and had to have spinal stabilization surgery, and he
Okay.
isn't allowed to play anymore. He was, I believe, a first round pick, and he was one of the best linebackers in the league. And growing at that time, he could guard sideline to sideline. He single handedly, losing him, destroyed our defense. So
Mhm.
that injury, certain breaks and ACL injuries, players can't move the same. The surgery doesn't go well. The break, you need to have like certain, stable, like who was another one? Alex Smith, who almost died from surgery. He was
Mhm.
managed to play again, but he technically had a career-ending injury that somehow turned for the better at the last minute. But the guy could
Mhm.
have had his leg amputated at worst, but somehow he was able to come back, thankfully. But stuff like that, back
Yeah.
injuries, neck injuries. I wouldn't say an Achilles is necessarily a career ending, depending on your age, but you know,
And I'm not being blatantly dumb or naive here for people listening. I know what some injuries are. I only ask because there's a lot of times, like you said, where we think's not the right word. There are injuries that people get that we believe to be career injuries, or that used to be career injuries that are no longer career injuries. I'll give you an example. Achilles. When you blew your Achilles out years ago, your career was over.
hmm
It did not matter what the sport was. Your career was done. Now, you blow your Achilles out with some very rigorous competitive rehab. You can be back to where you were in a year, or at least slightly below where you were, on the right path to be where you were. Let's say a year. Actually, it might be less, but we're going to say a year to be safe. Your ACL. Sorry. We can come back from ACL injuries now, too. Years ago, it was this big process. Now, the surgery doesn't even take as long, and the rehab's not as long. It's still a tough rehab. Don't take what I'm saying out of context. It is a tough rehab. It's hard. It's a hard road, but you can come back. That's the only thing I wanted to put. We get clarification on some things. Is that what we had once as career-ending injuries? Some of them are no longer career-ending. Now, Ryan Shazier, that's a damn shame. You are correct. That is a career-ending injury. Um, Anything to the head that you don't get up from, career-ending injury. I would have thought. And Nick, if I'm wrong on this, tell me if I'm wrong. I would have thought DeMar Hamlin would have been done. But, what was it, a heart attack on the field? But we
Cardiac
got
arrest, I think.
cardiac
It's
arrest.
slightly different. Yeah.
Cardiac incident.
Yeah.
What?
He basically shocked his heart out
Yeah.
on the field from the.
To me, that would have been career-ending years ago. But, I guess where technology has come, him and his doctors feel comfortable with him on the field, and you would never know anything like that happened had you just met him and watched him today. So that's the only reason I wanted to ask what a career injury was. It wasn't me being naive. It was just kind of throwing some basis out there. Nick,
Well, hell, I mean, we have a recent example. Damian Lillard just tore his Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
So the perfect example right here. So, he's not a spring chicken. I mean, he's still young, but the way he plays, it could completely change his trajectory.
We saw
Right?
Klay
'Cause
Thompson
presumably-
tear his ACL, and then the next year tear the Achilles on either the other leg or the same leg.
Yeah,
He tore his ACL twice.
It was
And his
ACL
Achilles.
then Achilles. Yeah, crazy. Different legs too, I believe.
Yeah,
we've
because
seen
he was overcompensating. That's why.
Yeah, we've seen Tom Brady go down and come back. We've seen Aaron Rodgers go down, and even though he didn't play great, his arm he had a decent amount of yards. He came back and played. We see NBA players go down and come back. Most of these are non-contact injuries. A lot of them you just shift up. Juju Watkins, there's one. We don't want to not bring her up, but they're injuries that you can't plan for. You just tweak your knee a certain way most of the time, and it tears. You land a certain way, and you pop your Achilles. And I'm glad now we're at a point people are at a point in their careers, or we're at a point in life where those aren't career-ending injuries, whether you play a sport or not. Now, obviously, if you don't play a sport, I mean, I don't know how dedicated you are going to be doing to rehab. If you just have a little limp, maybe the rest of your life, or I don't know. But as an athlete, I'm sure the rehab, you're a little more aggressive with it, maybe than somebody who's not getting paid to do a sport. That would just be my thing. Nick, what do you think about career-ending injuries?
In terms of,
well, let me put it this way. What do you think in terms of what Matt said?
About them getting a higher pick? I mean,
yeah.
I don't think it should be going above the third round though, Nick, like it is now. I don't mean no second, first round decision.
The idea of maybe compensatory picks.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe treating it similar to like a restricted free agent. That I could see. Especially if you acquired them as a free agent and say, like, for example, the year they got Rodgers, he gets hurt in 4 plays. What are you really getting? Well, I think he was a trade, but what are you getting? You clearly lost out because you had to give things up to get him. There should be some type of compensation for him only playing 4 plays. So yeah, give the Jets a compensatory pick, to try to make up for the value that was lost. Because in essence, 2023 was dead 4 plays into the season. And the crazy part is the Jets won that game.
Yep, on a punt return in overtime.
By an undrafted rookie. Ironic. Very ironic. I believe Xavier Gibson was an undrafted rookie that year. I just want to verify that.
I was just going to try and just be like, let me fact check them just because no yahoos in the comments.
I do believe he was undrafted. I don't know about rookie.
Correct. He was undrafted. He was a rookie in 2023. Okay. He was undrafted out of Stephen F. Austin. So pretty ironic there. But yeah, maybe compensatory picks, sure. But nothing like a high draft pick. Like, no. That's like Matt mentioned about risk. Like when we were talking about trading picks, you're taking on that risk, and part of that risk is the risk of injury. So, the Jets knew there's a chance he could get hurt. There's a chance that he could throw 30 picks like Jameis Winston. Aaron Rodgers will never have that many picks in a season, even with one Achilles. But I mean, you get the point. But no, I mean, I could see a compensatory pick in that extreme circumstance, or like Jordan Travis is another great example. When he got hurt at Florida State, Jets took a flyer on him in the 6th round. Dude didn't play it down, and he just retired. So he's never going to play football again. Maybe give him a compensatory 6th round pick back because they're never going to get to see him on the field.
He just retired, right?
Yes, he did a couple days ago. His leg, he shattered his leg. You know, it sucks. You know, maybe they shouldn't have drafted him, sure, but you know, there was a chance that he could recover or whatever. But if they never get the chance to have him on the field, just give him the 6th round pick back. What's a 6th round pick on the Jets going to amount to this season anyway? For them, you know, they got a lot to figure out. You know, so
yeah,
just give him the pick back.
Fun fact, real
Ryan,
quick,
okay.
Quick trivia, real quick, because you said the name and it's been a tidbit that I've known but never. It's one of those things you know, and you're like, you never have a time or place to bring it up, but I can finally bring it up. Do you know what the F in Stephen F. Austin stands for? Without Googling it? He's Googling it.
No, I'm not Googling.
I'm not.
I actually don't know what the F is.
It's Fuller.
Fuller? Oh.
Yeah, Fuller. It's funny. Sorry, that was my trivia moment. Matt, Matt, what were you going to say?
Tell me, man. I got that.
I was going to say that Ryan Watts from the Steelers this year had a major neck surgery last season in the preseason, and it was a major neck surgery that he had to have done in the off season or right after actually, but he was expected. Nothing was said until, you know, either I think post draft this year. He ended up retired. He suffered a huge neck injury on the final plays of the team's 3rd preseason game, and he won't ever touch the actual NFL field.
Yeah, that's a damn shame.
So I think that, you know, just another example of toss him whatever round. If he was a late round pick, just toss him either one round behind where he got picked, or even if it's like super late, like 6th or 7th round, just, you know, match it.
Yeah,
I
agree with that.
And it's just a question, you know, out there if just bringing the topic up of, hey, you know, you have a good team and you have a bad season. Do you deserve that high a pick if it's a fluke? You know, and I think from what I'm hearing from you guys, the answer is no. You know, the draft should go to teams that it's been more than a season and they're struggling. They need the players. So, no, I'm with both of you on that. I think if you have a player who can no longer play and that's the reason, yeah, throw him a draft pick, you know, and hope that helps. But I wouldn't throw him a high 1st round pick if you've just had a fluke season because your best player stepped the wrong way and you got hurt. I don't think that compensates you your bust of a season getting a top pick. That's just my opinion, though. So, Jets fans, you have more to worry about than things I talk about. So, we are going to move on and talk about playoff formatting. Now, there were a few different ways we could go with this. Before we start, let me ask a question to you guys. Obviously, we watch all different sports: Major League Baseball, college basketball, college football, NHL, MLB, NBA, cricket, Olympics, you name it, we watch it. Hell, they had, I think, Guitar Hero on ESPN, Air Guitar on ESPN the other day. We watch everything. When it comes to playoff formatting, I think I started with Matt last time. I'm going to start with Nick. Nick, who has the best playoff format in sports? And who needs to change their playoff format?
So I'm going to say soccer.
Interesting. Tell us why.
Champions League. One game at each field. combined aggregate score wins.
Explain to those who
So-
don't watch soccer what that means.
So so for example, the UEFA Champions League is a European club soccer league. They play group stages and like a tournament. So it'll have like Barcelona and what's another, like Arsenal,
Yeah, Arsenal.
right? All these top flight teams. I think they're in the semifinals right now.
Yeah,
And so what they'll
Arsenal.
do,
Yeah, Arsenal was playing against
yeah,
PSG.
it's Arsenal, Paris Saint-Germain, Barcelona, and Inter Milan, which is in Italy. Go Inter.
Mhm.
But I'm Italian, so I have to, I don't really, Anyway, what they'll do is they'll match up, right? So I believe right now Barca's playing Inter, right? They'll play the first leg in Barcelona or whomever's the, first home team, right? And say, I believe their game ended 3-3. It was a draw, right?
Mhm.
So they'll end it as a tie, 3-3. Then they'll play a second leg in Italy because Inter gets to host a game against them. And say if the game ends 2-1 in favor of Barcelona, they will take a combined score of 5-4, and Barcelona wins. So they would advance. Now obviously soccer is completely different, football, as some say, across the pond, but it's a little different than baseball and NBA. NBA is a best of 7, right? Football's one and done. So you could argue football's one and done, right? It's win or go home. I personally like soccer because I think you can get the most out of your players twice, and it gives each team a chance to host. So it's 2 different environments. So I would pull for like the UEFA Champions League because it's the best teams on an entire continent going at it. And it's the most popular sport, makes more money than any other sport. I'm gonna go with that.
Okay. Do you feel there's one that you just don't like their playoff format?
To be honest, I would say baseball. Only reason is because it used to be they had, at least when I was a kid. Now this is when dinosaurs were roaming the earth. I'm just kidding. I'm a '90s baby, so they had the divisional series, or they had wild card, divisional, conference, World Series. So they would do like 2 out of 3. Then it was best of 5, best of 7, best of 7. Then they've changed the format to almost make themselves look like football, where they have like 7 teams make it, where the bottom 2 will play a wild one game and then they'll do like 2 teams get a bye and all this other stuff. And to me, it just doesn't work in baseball like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like the hockey and basketball format because it's just the top 8 teams get in, you play your series, and you go. And football, of course, is, one and done. So, but I don't like the changes that baseball made. I don't think there was anything wrong with it before. But, they want more possible games and more money and all this other stuff. So that's how it works. But for my liking, I would either go, if you're going to do a series, do an extended series, or do one and done, or do what soccer does, 1 home game for each team, and whoever scores more wins. Period.
Well, that was an issue in the NBA All-Star game, so I don't think we want to whoever scores more in that scenario. But that'd be really fun.
That's a whole nother topic.
Matt, let me ask you the same question. Playoff formats. Whose do you like? Whose do you not like?
I like the NFL's the best now, and my reasoning being is that the team that earns the first seed is the only team that gets to bye.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. If you earn the best record, you deserve the week off. doesn't necessarily translate to, going to the Super Bowl, but you get to have that advantage or disadvantage. I think it would be cool just as just like a thought to have the have the first seed pick who gets the bye or not, or who they get to play the first round. I don't know, but the way that it's set up, I think, is actually perfect for the league. Before just for context, the people that have only seen the NFL now, it used to be just a few years ago where the top two seeds both got byes. So,
Interesting.
and the worst, I'm gonna say the NBA has the worst, and I guess my reasoning goes to the play-in tournament. I don't think that the 9th and 10th seed should be playing for a spot to get into the playoffs because they weren't good enough to hold a 7th or 8th spot. So why do they deserve to knock out? Granted, they will have 2 games, but let's say you could lose. I'm trying to think of trying to put this in order here. Let's say Golden State and the Kings. Let's say Golden State sweeps the Kings in their regular season series, and
Mm-hmm.
now they have a chance to lose to the Kings with a worse record and get bounced from the playoffs. That doesn't sound right to me because any team can get lucky once, but if you're playing a series that's 4 games in the regular season and you win all 4, and then you're gonna get bounced in the playoffs or in a play-in tournament. That it's just. Can we just go back to the old format, please, where it's the top 8? Because I don't think a 9th seed, other than this year, where this is the first time we've seen the West go from like 2 through 8 at the same record. Aside from that, like, really, I don't agree with that. That
No, I
it just
agree.
it just really doesn't make sense.
No, the play-in tournament's like a last-ditch effort to get some teams in the playoffs. I don't care for it. I
So
get
also
that they're bringing.
let me put this scenario in there. Let's say the 8th seed somehow has 54 wins. It probably won't ever play out like that, but let's say that the 8th seed had 54 wins. The 9th seed has 30 something wins, and they can get in the playoffs by beating a team twice or by beating 2 teams to get in there. So all their games in the regular season didn't matter because they made it to the playoffs by the play-in tournament, which was just 2 games.
No, look, I agree with you. I think that is the $1,000,000 question right there. I think the funny thing about it is if you go and look at their standings this year, and we had the old format, the 8th seed in the West would have had 48 wins. And that would have been Memphis at 48 and 34. 48 wins in the East gets you 5th place. So at 8th place in the West, you are basically under 500. So I can understand why if you're in the East sometimes you don't want those 7 through 9 teams in there. They're not 500 teams. In the West, with the exception of Dallas and Sacramento to an extent, they came on, but 1 through 8 are usually almost 50 win teams. The 8th seed was 48 wins. I'm sorry, that's not that far off 50.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny you said that because you could have a scenario where teams 1 through 8 are winning 50 games,
50,
and
yeah,
it's
but like
great.
54 wins is where I was going because that's a decent break at the end of the year.
Yeah, no, you're right. 54 games is pretty good. I mean, that would have been 3rd in the East, 2nd in the West. It's not a bad scenario, but hey, it happens. I'm going to ask you both a question here. You both brought up multiple scenarios. Nick, I think yours in the soccer was kind of a twofer, home and home. Matt, yours was, I think you said you liked the way football was.
Yeah, American football, not
American
European
football.
football.
How do we feel about one and done formats on tournaments? Obviously, the NCAA tournament, almost all college sports tournaments are basically, except for baseball, in college, are basically one and done scenarios. Do we like that better than a best of? In the professional leagues too, for those who do one and done? What do you think?
Nick, do you want to go first, or you want me to take it?
I'll go first. I mean, I think it depends on the sport, or it depends on. I don't know. Like football makes sense to be a one and done because they only play one game a week, and the physical toll of the NFL schedule and stuff like that. Whereas the NBA, they're playing 3-4 games a week. You see a team, 4 to 6 times a year. Do we need a best of 7 series between the Cavs to know that they're better than the Miami Heat? No. And based on what we saw those last 2 games, was disgraceful. Maybe because back in the day, the NBA used to have best of 5 in the first round.
Yeah.
So maybe make the first round game shorter. That could alleviate, us watching the Miami Heat put on the shit show they did in games 3 and 4. We didn't need to see that 4th game. It was a tragedy, a massacre on their home court. I could have played better than that.
And I hope they refunded people tickets. It was torturous to watch.
I mean, so was that Game
I-
7 of the Nuggets series that I was confused that how that ended up a Game 7 the way that happened.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I will say this in defense of the Clippers. I mean, they got blown out, but they got blown out in the second half. Basically, the Miami Cleveland game was awful from the tap. Like Tyler Hero made his first 3-pointer, and that was the last positive thing he did all night. Basically, from anybody on that team. I mean, at one point, Nick and I, we were talking like, look, it may be time for the coach to go. Like, we've never seen that. And it's really funny that they actually came out and said maybe it's time for Pat Riley to go. So that's just some thought on that, but continue with your thought. Sorry. Just want to throw that out there.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I know you mentioned one and done specifically. I think it worked in certain sports, March Madness specifically. There's just a certain level, like there's a certain feel, a certain buzz with the March Madness tournament that you don't get in baseball, that you don't get in hockey. One and done makes sense there because all the players are one and done. I'm just kidding. To do pop, but if you're gonna do it, there it is. The soundboard god. Do you prefer soundboard god or soundboard poppy?
I'm just late. I'm late at it right now, but you could always call me Daddy Soundboard.
I'm not going to call you Daddy Soundboard, but you know what? Maybe our viewers will. We'll let the viewers decide.
I think we just
Whatever
lost those comments.
Completely on topic. Yeah. If you're gonna do one and done, make sure they count. Like the NFL makes complete sense to be one and done. I don't think it's as sensible. I think that's a word, right? Sensible. Yeah. It's not as sensible or feasible to me in basketball or hockey or even baseball, just because I think a lot of especially in baseball, the way they schedule, they play 3 to 4 game series anyway. So you're really looking at it like, okay, say we play the Yankees and Red Sox will play. I don't know how many number of games it is, but it comes out to like 5 total series, and maybe the Yankees win 3-2 or something. It makes sense to say, okay, well, let's see it in another 5 game or 7 game sequence. and whoever wins that series goes on. Whoever loses goes home. So I don't know if one and done will work in those other sports like basketball and hockey and stuff. But in football, you only play once a week, so makes complete sense.
Matt?
In the playoffs, I don't think it would work in the NBA. However, in the in-season tournament, I do believe it would work. A one and done format, and I would like to see that actually. In March Madness, for sure, it's just what we look forward to in that is what team is going to upset what team, and which player is going to rise above to carry their team, aka Walter Clayton, through the tournament. So would I like to see multiple playoff games for football? Maybe the Super Bowl, but that's not even. No, I mean,
So if the Super Bowl was a best of 3, do you think it'd be more exciting or less exciting?
best of 3
I would
same
argue
day.
that.
No, no, best of 3, like 3 weeks out, 1, 2, and then potential 3.
Give me 1 second to think about that.
I would argue no, because the game is already played at a neutral site, so there's no need to play 3
Does
of
that
them.
mean that we get 2 different halftime shows?
Look,
That's what he's concerned with.
I know that's what I was thinking. Well, Nick, hold on that thought. If you're doing a best of 3, you may not need a neutral site.
So what would you propose?
You could do a home and home, and then higher seed gets the
home
host.
neutral?
Yeah.
Home neutral?
Game three could be on the host side, or game 3 could be a neutral site. We'd have to figure it out. But would you be interested in a best of 3 Super Bowl?
Ooh, maybe not
Me
a best of
personally,
3
I would
Super
not.
Bowl, but I would think that I would like to see different, maybe still neutral site, but I would like to see like a Super Bowl played in Buffalo. Bring back weather, doesn't
Yeah.
need to be the best
That's
conditions. But like, yeah, one year put it in Seattle, 1 year put it in Pittsburgh, 1 year put it in New England.
I
Rotate
would
it.
like them to go international with it.
That would
Do
be
what?
pretty cool too. I
Say
think
it
that
again?
that would be disrespectful.
If they played the Super Bowl in like Mexico City or Toronto or London, they already do London games. Go to Wembley.
Yeah.
100,000 arena.
The problem with that, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think we will see that in our lifetime.
I hope we don't.
There's too much money you're leaving on the field to do that. And the only reason I don't think you'll see a Super Bowl overseas without a host team there
Yeah.
is the time difference. If you do a Super Bowl in London, you're losing a good chunk of the U.S. So you're losing marketing. You're losing, well, economic in whatever city it would be in. You're losing everything. It would have to be, and I hate saying this because the fans are freaking crazy. It would almost have to be the 2 biggest franchises playing in the Super Bowl, which I don't even think would happen. You'd have to have the 2 biggest markets doing it, just I think to break even. You'd break records overseas, but you wouldn't break anything here because it wouldn't be live. And if we did watch it live, I mean, if it's 7 p.m. in Europe, what time is it here?
7 p.m. in Europe would be 1 a.m. here.
Yeah, I mean,
no, they're ahead of us. I think it'd be 1 p.m.
Yeah, we're still at work, and that's us on the East Coast. That's not Hawaii, California, or Hawaii, who are 3 hours behind us. So if it's 1 p.m. here, right? No, yeah, 1 p.m. here. It's 11. No, I'm sorry. It's 10 a.m. on the West Coast, and then I think what is Hawaii? 4 or 5 hours behind that. That's 2 extra hours. We'll say 1 to be safe. That's 9 or 10 at 8 or 9 a.m. there. No one's watching the Super Bowl at 8 o'clock in the morning before they go to work. Well, they have to go to work, so it ain't happening. I think you're losing too much of a market. I know. I'll take basketball for example. I know they have talks of international teams trying to figure out the logistics of putting a team in China and putting a team in London. Don't think it's going to happen right now in our lifetime. They have other cities in the U.S. they're looking at, but I know that was on the docket down the road. But when you move a major sporting event of a U.S. based sport overseas, it's great for a regular season game, but I think you're leaving too much money on the table to move a Super Bowl over there. As awesome as that would be for the people over there, you're kind of screwing us here with it. That's my opinion.
So, yeah, no, totally. And if I may, I would argue that it's already heading that way. We've seen in England, Germany,
Nick, you're cutting out.
Mexico.
Nick, you're cutting out.
Oh, no, okay, I'm sorry. Technical difficulties. Apologies. We're seeing it already in Mexico. They just did in Brazil. This year, also going into Madrid.
You're still
and
cutting
Ireland.
out.
Still down.
Yeah.
Is better?
Yep, much better.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, cutting out again.
Difficulties twice.
Cam, you're hearing it, right? It's not just on my end?
Yeah, you saw the Transformer.
No.
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, just so we don't have a blank quietness, I'll do a little talking while you try and figure it out. Yeah, no, I'm not against the idea. I'm excited to hear your argument or hear what you're going to say on it because I am curious. But I think there's a lot of logistics that would have to go behind it. But I'd be excited to see we're going to have, what's it called? The World Cup is coming to the U.S., I believe, in the next few years. So that'll be the first thing we'll look at. I think ratings for here will be great. Ratings throughout other countries, maybe not so much because of the time difference. I'd be very curious to see how that all pans out. But that'll be it. Nick, are you back with us?
I sure hope so.
Yep, you sound great.
That sounded better.
Sorry about that, guys. I was just crashing out a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Am I good to make my rebuttal really quick? It's nothing crazy, but
Let's hear it.
I would argue that it's already heading into the direction of hosting a major event in an international location, only because since they've introduced the London games, that was the first major expansion they did, like say 10, 15 years ago. They have since done games in England, and not just London. They went to Tottenham, London. They've been in Germany. They've gone to Mexico. They were in Brazil last year, and now they're adding Madrid and Ireland. They're also bringing college football games overseas as well. So I do believe that there will be a Super Bowl somewhere internationally in our lifetimes, and I actually think it's going to happen relatively soon. I don't know when. We're also seeing a lot more international players entering the NFL at a higher pace than we have in years past. So I think the goal of the league is to go global, and I think that's where they're headed. Plus, in terms of, I understand like the economic factors in those host cities, but I think the international presence that they would have and the outreach, and I also wouldn't be shocked if they put the Super Bowl on Netflix, just because of how many people have Netflix accounts. They would get hundreds of millions of people that could then watch it at any time, which would alleviate the problems of watching it in Hawaii or, time zone differentials. They could either watch it live or whenever they want, and they'll get the bag. Because for an example, when the WWE sold Monday Night Raw to Netflix, they got $5 billion for that. the NFL just to send one Super Bowl to Netflix, they're gonna get paid.
They're already doing the Christmas Day games as tests too.
And if they did a playoff game too.
It's not the matter of sending it to Netflix or streaming services, because that's the way most media is going, which we'll divvy out as we move through our topics. You know, you can't underestimate the concept of time, and just moving something to Netflix or Hulu or some streaming service to watch it is fine. We watched the was it the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight on Netflix? Terrible, but we watched it. You know, so yeah, they'll make a ton of money off that. But if I'm looking to watch a live game and see it live in action and not have my phone blow up at 1:00 in the morning to watch a game, or to try and watch it the next day without knowing what's going to happen, that ain't going to happen if it's overseas. Now, Mexico's different because it's almost our time zone. I don't think the time difference is too terrible. But when you go overseas in either direction, you're losing a chunk of people. For example, we talked about it during the NCAA tournament. There was a reason that we on the East Coast don't care to an extent about what happens with West Coast teams, because we never see it. When those players leave the West Coast to come East, it's because we're in bed by 10 o'clock when their game is kicking off. Even if it's a game we want to see, we DVR it and we may watch it in the morning, but that comes with the understanding that when we wake up, we're going to know the outcome before we watch the game. And 9 out of 10 times, we don't watch the game after. We watch the highlights. If it's a championship game, we stay up for it. But again, it's only a 2-hour, 3-hour difference at a time where I'm available. If you go either side of the U.S., the Pacific or the Atlantic, now we got to look at the timing of it, because their available time is not my available time. And whereas I do see we have regular season games overseas, I don't think that as global as we're going to be, we're going to move the biggest football event to a country, or take that part back, to a location outside of the U.S. that does not have a team. I could see you moving the All-Star game there if you want to do that. We already have regular season games, but in terms of the Super Bowl, you'll get that streaming money whether it's overseas or not. That's the way sports are going, is going to go to the streaming services. I think the WWE, Major League Boxing, let's say Taekwondo, but that's not it. Fighting with the kicking and punching, I can't think of it.
Kickboxing?
UHC? No,
UFC.
UFC. They've already shown the blueprint on what to do with streaming services. It's just the NHL and the NBA and MLB adopting that. They'll get the money no matter what, but in terms of moving your biggest event of the year overseas right now, I'm not sure. Maybe late part of our lifetime, but I would only say if there's a team out there. I can't see them just moving it to London because they've only hosted regular games. I don't see that coming.
I'm already mad enough that there's games in the regular season overseas.
Yeah.
Because
fans they like it, but they don't like you're losing a home game.
Also, let me just put it this way. Let's say you're a Green Bay Packers fan, and the Green Bay Packers play the New England Patriots once every 4 years, but you live in Boston, and you want to see your team play. Even it's an away game, you're going to go to Foxborough to watch your Packers play, and all of a sudden it's overseas. So now you don't have that opportunity for another 4 years.
Yeah. I think it's a great thing overseas to move some of the games for regular season.
Yeah, put preseason games over there.
Yeah, I don't think you get playoff games over there. You know, we have people arguing right now if playoff games should be in domes, or if every team should have a dome, let alone be open air. So to
no,
move it
I want to see
overseas,
7 feet of snow in the Super Bowl.
move it overseas, I think is just, hey, Nick, you could be looking in the crystal ball, and it could be exactly that. We could do it in the next few years. I just don't think we're at a place where we would do it now. That's what I'm saying. I think there's a lot of steps that have to be taken before we got it, and I think we have a lot of owners now who are older to an extent, and they'll deal with some change, but they're not gonna change if it's gonna hit their bottom dollar, and that's where I'm thinking.
I think
But
that's fair. I just think it's a huge opportunity, and I think they're going to explore it at some point.
I'm sure they explored it, or they're exploring it. I don't think you're wrong at all with that. I just, and maybe this is me being, and for those of you who don't know, there is a slight age gap between all of us. I'm more the older one. Well, not more. I am the older one. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty set in my ways on some things. Nick's someone who can see both sides of it, and Baywood is just his way or the highway. But
Hell
those are
no.
joking. I'm joking. But those are that's kind of my background on it. I'm not opposed to it. I just think that change for me is hard. I don't mind the international regular season games. I think it's cool to see fans in other cities, but at the same time, I want my home playoff game. You know, I'm already not thrilled to have to fly somewhere with a dome, Arizona, New Orleans, to go to a Super Bowl. I'm sure as hell not flying to China or Mexico. No disrespect to those countries. I'm sure I've seen many games over on TV. The fans are great. But it's a lot more expensive for me to go overseas to see a game than it is to see one in the US. And that's where I'm coming from on that. But it's a thought, and it's something that, we don't get paid the big bucks to make that decision, and we sure as hell don't benefit from the decision when it comes to financially. So
True.
we'll see. But that's actually a decent segue into our last topic, which I think we'll spend a few minutes on also, is social media and sports. It giveth and it taketh away, at the same time. Matt, I'm gonna start with you on this one. It's a pretty broad topic. Good, bad, and different. Generic, go with whatever direction you want. I want to hear your opinion. How has social media, or how have you seen social media impact sports? Good, bad, and different. What do you think? And which
um,
social media platform? Because there's multiple to choose from if you think one's had more of an impact on another.
um, both. I think we addressed one of the issues before. Uh, it, is that like players like, let's say, other than like historic players like, Babe Ruth and them, but like older players that from previous generations can be shown now off old tape, uploaded onto social media and just blasted like, oh wow, look at this highlight from 1952. Like you're able to get exposed to more quickly. You don't need to read the newspaper or stay up and watch the game. You could watch highlights on Instagram. People react to videos on there. YouTube, they got highlights. I mean, I guess considered social media too in a way because you can comment on it. Um, but it's also worse for the players. I hate to talk about LeBron every time we have a podcast, but LeBron gets ripped to shreds on a daily basis on social media and television when, you know, and he could see that because he could tag him when back in the day, if there was anything that you needed to say about somebody, you put it in the newspaper and maybe not, that player got to see that article or that section of that newspaper, depending on how fast word of mouth spread. Um, So there's definitely upsides to it. You get to see more than certain plays. Like, oh, did you see the Odell Beckham Jr. catch? Yeah. Well, I didn't, but now it's all over my Instagram. So you were able to see it. I don't like the amount of recreation of it where everyone can just steal the footage and just play it over and over on social media, but I mean, it gets it out there faster. Um, I don't complain about that, but I just feel bad for some of the players that have to deal with a lot of the heat constantly. Luka getting fat shamed all over Instagram and memes and stuff. I mean, it's just it's going to eventually start taking a toll on these players' mental health if they listen to it. Kevin Durant's one of the softest, thinnest skin players out there. He'll create burner accounts to combat these people. So I think it's negative in that aspect, but positive in overall definition of sports.
Yeah, I mean, your life is now an open book. I think that's the best way, we could say it. Everybody's a paparazzo now. Everyone's got a cell phone. Everyone goes out. And everyone has, I think we take the private life away from athletes when we gave out social media. You can't do anything with stepping out now without seeing something. Good, bad, and different. I'll give you one right here. We talked about it during the NFL draft. I don't want to say we killed this guy, but social media didn't help Shedeur Sanders. Now, that's his personality, and we were just catching his personality. But it begs to have asked the question, are we better off not knowing his personality and making the draft, or seeing it on social media? A lot of questions that we've had about people have been answered. There are athletes and celebrities that we thought were really nice people who are jerks, but we can't help but watch. I'm because we're recording, I can't think of the guy's name in Baltimore, the kicker,
Justin Tucker.
Justin Tucker, who's on his Deshaun Watson kick. You know,
Wait a second.
oh, kick! That was right. Good one. I didn't know I did that. But social media is not helping him because now we're talking about him and Deshaun Watson in the same light. People, stay away from massage parlors. You have enough money. But that's what social media is doing. We don't care how good Justin Tucker is right now. We don't care about anything he's done. We only want to know what this chick looks like on social media who's accusing him. Right? We want to know, what does she look like? And it's all over social media. Deshaun Watson. Well, what do these masseuses look like that he had to go through like 16 of them? We're on social media watching. I'll do another one. Johnny Depp. Personally, I couldn't get enough of the trial on social media. I kept watching. It was like a train wreck. But that's what social media has done to us, good, bad, and different.
Hell,
Yeah,
Shannon Sharp had a leaked like Instagram scene where he accidentally went live while he was railing some chick.
Yeah, and Paul Pierce had the strippers, in his place. Social media has hurt and helped, and we've known some people to be human. Zinedine Zidane headbutting the dude. I remember that. It can help us because we have it and we can see it. But are we better off not knowing about it? And I think that's the question sometimes we need to ask ourselves. Nick, I'm going to come to you before we all circle back to more stuff. Social media, good, bad, and different. How do you think it's affected sports?
Well, any publicity is good publicity, right? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, that could go either way, I guess, as long as we're talking about it.
I think that I agree with the private citizen to public figure. These athletes, their lives are pretty much every little thing they do is under the microscope. how they play, what they wear to the games, their comments after the game, the this, the that, everything they do. And, it's funny that they're kind of the new movie stars. They're the new rock stars of our time. They're like, if you look at Hollywood, yeah, you still have the paparazzi and all this other stuff, but I feel like athletes are more in the know, and they're going to the Met galas and they're doing this. LeBron's a Ken doll, right? All this kinds of transcendent stuff, you know, um, and it comes at a price, right? They don't have the privacy that we think they do, or maybe we say, oh, well, they got 3 million followers on TikTok, but that doesn't mean that 3 million people need to be checking in on them. So in a way, I think it's harmful because there could be misinformation. There could be things that are exaggerated. We got to figure out what's going on with this whole Justin Tucker thing. As Stephen A. Smith used to say, stay off the weed, right? I think the athletes need to lose the masseuse a little bit. Stay away from the masseuse. Just don't get massages. People. Just enough. Right? But at the same time, this could be all made up and it could kill Justin Tucker's reputation. We don't know. Right? And I think a lot of times with social media for athletes and things, we're so quick to jump to a conclusion of, oh, they're disgruntled, oh, they want to trade, they want their coach fired, they go beefing with reporters like KD does all the time, which is entertaining.
Yeah.
But sometimes it will paint sports or athletes in a negative picture. And a lot of people have access to their lives essentially through the realm of social media, and it may not necessarily be healthy. So
it's also not
Do you
healthy
feel
for the
we-
average person. Like us seeing an athlete do something might influence us to do something just because we think they're cool or we look up to them. Just putting that out there.
Do you feel that we, maybe not us per se, or maybe us to an extent, do you feel that we judge athletes based off what we see off social media more now because it's readily available and it's not so much about their game anymore, it's what we see on social media?
Sure.
to a degree, I don't think it's the complete factor. I think we care more about how they perform on the court and then how they respond to adversity that we care about. But I think
Let me give
social
you an
media
example.
plays a part in that for sure.
Let me give you an example, only because it popped in my head and I'm getting notifications on my phone about it, other stuff in general. I'm going to take Dylan Brooks.
Oh boy.
If we go on social media right now and we say the name Dylan Brooks, obviously the FBI and CIA are listening on our phone, so it's going to pop up all over my TikTok later. But what are we going to see on social media? We're going to see videos of this dude chirping. We're going to see videos of him setting hard screens, maybe illegal. We're going to see him getting technicals. We're going to see everything but his game, right?
Mhm.
That's who he is. Now, he is an NBA player, so he was good enough to get there. He's been in the league, 6 years? Maybe more. I'm going to say 6 to be safe. I think it might be a little more. And he stayed. Hate him, love him, whatever. He's good at what he does. He's an irritant, but he's a professional basketball player. And whatever team is on usually likes him. The fans support him. Social media has not helped him at all. It is no longer about his basketball abilities. We judge Dylan Brooks based off of what other players say. One, which we only find out through social media. Or two, we watch the game, he sets one hard screen and we call him dirty in the 30 seconds in a 48-minute game that we saw. So I think you're right. We have to be careful with social media because it can go either way. And I only said that Dylan Brooks because The Warriors are up right now, 75-62 in the fourth. And it popped up on my phone. You guys brought up, just to finish off this topic maybe a little bit, you brought up Netflix. And I think this is interesting as to how far we've come with sports since I was younger, and you can only watch a West Coast game 10 o'clock at night on the East Coast, or at 4 o'clock in the morning after they replayed the East Coast game and West Coast game on TNT. So it was either 10 o'clock or 4 o'clock, something like that. We've come so far with social media and games. Netflix, you brought up the WWE got how much, Nick? You said what? Was it $5 billion?
$5 billion just for Monday Night Raw.
They got $5 billion from Monday Night Raw. We've come to a generation where we can replay stuff, and it brings stuff into every single person's home if they want to see it, whether it's on their cell phone, streaming through their computer, TV, laptop, you name it. Do you think that is financially responsible? And do you feel that it's more about the money or getting the sport out there? Nick, I'm going to start with you. How has social media impacted that aspect of it?
It's a good question. I think for the majority of the major American sports, I would say, particularly the NBA,
Mhm.
I think I'll center my focus on them. I feel like they just want money. They just want, like, the whole deal they have with Amazon that I believe takes effect next year with Prime, right?
Mhm.
That I believe was solely money. Because Amazon came in with a huge offer. They basically bullied who was it, Turner?
Yeah.
Owns TNT and TBS and stuff, and Warner Brothers Discovery out of, and NBC. I know NBC was trying to make a big push to get NBA primetime stuff. They just came in with this huge offer, and the NBA was like, "Yep." Now, it could have just been an offer they couldn't refuse, but at the same time, when you think about putting those games exclusively on Prime, not everybody has an Amazon Prime account.
Nope,
But
I do not.
But they're getting paid with bees. They're getting it's like $1 billion+ deal. So they're gonna go where the money goes, and they feel like if we can get somewhat close to the viewership we already have, we can always get new people to get new Prime accounts, which will then boost ratings even more, which means more money.
Mm-hmm.
So the way they see it, it's short-term gain for the potential for even more long-term gain. How much social media has to do with that? It's interesting because I think sports journalism has completely been reformed because of social media. How did we find out about the Luka trade? Twitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
We thought Sham's Twitter account got hacked. That was the first thing we thought.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't know who Shams was. I'm not going to lie.
Me neither. And I'm like, how the hell is he the first person to know this massive trade? Right? And then why are we concerned with his Twitter being hacked? That's not like, wait, why do we care about this guy so much? But it turns out he dropped a bomb via Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. We're moving away from cable television. We're moving away from, newspapers and magazines. No one's going to grab a Sports Illustrated anymore, and they're all getting their news and their info and their feeds from TikTok, from Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And even then, you could consider YouTube and Netflix. They're streaming platforms, but in essence, YouTube especially, you could consider that social media, right? Everyone has a channel, you subscribe, you can leave comments, all this other stuff. It's just like a social media outlet.
Yeah.
It's its own little universe through the web. And you have access to any piece of information you want on an athlete on your phone. Aside from seeing them and touching them and, all this stuff, you feel like you're a part of their life. It's crazy to me. It's just crazy. But that's where that's how it is.
Yeah, and I think that's where we've come. Matt, what do you think? Speak to us. Spit some facts.
The whole Amazon thing kind of rubs me the wrong way because you got this big monopoly that's coming in and taking over everything, and I mean everything. Like, why can I order something from the same company and get it the next day with the same membership that I could watch the NFL?
Crazy.
And TNT has been a loyal customer in owning rights to the NBA for however many years, at least 15. And now, for better or for worse, we don't get to see the crew of Shaq, Charles Barkley, and I'm missing the rest of the two other guys that are there, but the four guys that run the TNT broadcast.
Ernie and Kenny.
Ernie and Kenny, that's right. Because Amazon came in and whipped their checkbook out. So that rubs me the wrong way. Streaming platforms shouldn't, exclusive streaming platforms should not have rights to sports if, it doesn't come with their cable plan, or, Hulu has a TV subscription and YouTube TV, you could stream it, but you get your channels. So if you're paying for that, you should be paying for your sports too. You shouldn't have to get 15 different. I shouldn't have to have Netflix to watch this playoff game and then have Amazon Prime to watch another one, and then Peacock you may or may not have to pay for, and then CBS is now on Paramount Plus. Like, I'm not spending $75 and then buying Sunday ticket. I'm not spending that much money on the NFL. I'm just not going to do it. I'll cancel all my subscriptions. I'll go to Buffalo Wild Wings for cheaper. Anyway, that being said, what I got off on such a tangent. What was the question here?
You basically answered it.
Okay.
It was, so full disclosure with everybody on here, I do not own cable or internet anymore. I'm doing this on my phone, off the unlimited data, because it is so expensive to own all this stuff, to try and get it, to have Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, HBO Go. Oh my God. And then to have cable and Wi-Fi on top of that it's ridiculous. It's a lot. So I understand, Matt, where you're going. I already pulled the plug on it. So I'm here for it. I do you laugh at me for going to tap room so much, but hey, they're flipping the bill for it. So why would I not take advantage of watching sports at restaurants and bars? But yeah, no, I've already cut that. I don't pay for it anymore. Not that I want things to go to Netflix or Hulu or anything that specifically, but I miss, and it was never free because obviously you pay for cable, but I do miss sports on cable TV. I think that's the truest form of watching sports. TNT, ESPN, ABC, NBC, FS1, whatever it is on sports, that's what it belongs. Channel 2 used to be on Channel 2 years ago. So to me, that's it.
It's like, why can't people or big companies like this just be okay with owning their niche? Netflix was at first movies, then it moved to movies and shows, and they made deals. They have their own studio. They create Netflix originals. Great. Amazon does it. Apple TV does it. You own your niche.
Yeah.
Why am I renting? Like, I never once was like, Netflix. Well, that one NFL game is really gonna. Yeah, I'll get the membership for that one NFL game. No,
Yeah. No.
I got it for the movies. I got it for the shows. Why do I need sports on there?
Well, and that's the $1 million question. It's one person did it, and then everybody's going to do it because they saw one person make money, and nobody wants to be the last to do it. Because when you're the last to do it, you can't benefit from it. And I think that's where, unfortunately, it's going. I dread the day that, we can only look at sports on a streaming service. It's coming. Like I said and was saying when Nick was, I'll use Stephen A's word, giving a grand soliloquy, but it is coming. And you will have to pay for a streaming service to watch sports. And I think that is the most distasteful thing out there. And it's not just NBA, it's NFL, MLB, NHL. They all have their own apps already, but it's coming. And I think there's a generation of kids who will not grow up to what it's like to just be able to turn on the TV and watch the 7 o'clock game. It's a damn shame. But I'm going to ask this last question, and then we're going to move on to Baywood's bets and Nick's rants. You can give me one word. It's fine. Nick, I want to start with you because you're a little older than Matt. Not by much, because Matt's old. But how have you seen sports change with media and social media in your lifetime since you've been on it, since you were younger, first watching, to where you are now?
I think I'm going to try to cater my argument to more collegiate sports
Okay.
because I think back in my day, it just felt like rivalries meant more.
Okay.
It was more pride to be, a Michigan Wolverine versus Ohio State. Not to say that the rivalry doesn't exist still, but I think because of social media and NIL and big money and all this other stuff, it kind of takes away from the pride of the playing the game for a certain team or a certain university, especially at the collegiate level. I feel like that's more an NIL thing, but if I were to use one word, or maybe two words, I would say less meaningful and or less symbolic. Um, I think in the professional realm, you kind of get more of the same because it's professional. But I would say it affects more amateur and collegiate in a more negative way than professional.
Okay. I can see that. Matt, how have you seen it change in your lifetime? Joke around, but you are younger than Nick and I, but it's changed a bit. How has it changed from when you were younger to where you are now?
The first NFL play I ever saw was Troy Polamalu taking a pick six back. Don't remember what team it was against, but I just remember the hair. And, that was just something I don't think I've ever I don't even know if I've seen that highlight since that day. But more than likely I have and just don't remember it as such. But that's what got me in love with football. It wasn't a bunch of people trying to get clicks on social media and, rage bait people and expose people for likes and to get a quick uh, pathway to fame. Um, I'm supposed to pick one word. I mean, it's evolved and you can catch more. It's not just like you have to like, man, I missed like half that game last night because I fell asleep, and ESPN Sports Center didn't show the highlights of the game. You're able to just look at the highlights of the game. So I think there's benefits to that, but being able to comment and argue with people on there, I just think is, the comments should just be turned off. So if I have to think of one word,
I mean, I didn't say a word, it's more a sentence, but hey, if you got a word for it, let's hear it.
I'll just say it needs work.
To be determined needs work.
Yeah, no, it needs work.
Under
Yeah. Go
under
ahead, Kim.
construction.
Yeah,
No,
under
is it under
construction.
construction?
Yeah. I think
Um,
I think it needs less fan input.
yeah, yeah, I think that's great. That's true. I'll take mine real quick. Is I remember, like I said it. We were having a conversation years ago when Kobe passed away. I remember having to stay up and watch at 10 o'clock to watch his Lakers play on the West Coast. I think I don't want to say appreciation for sports has gone down because I don't think it has to an extent. But I think the level in which we appreciate sports has gone down because it's so readily available. Sometimes when something's so easy, we take it for granted. And I think we do it with sports athletes in general. I remember watching Yankees games with my dad, and huge Yankee fan. And we're in Connecticut, yes, but I do not believe at the time we were getting every Yankee game. And when they came on, you made sure not to miss it because you didn't know when the next game was coming on. The Knicks had MSG. We had all of their games. But even then, you didn't miss it because the rerun was not going to be the same as watching the game live because they didn't play a full game. It was like an hour or a trumped up game, truncated game. There's the word. You didn't miss events when they were on TV, so you appreciated it more. You get athletes who come to your city once and you want to be there no matter the sport because you want to see them. NHL, MLB, football, doesn't matter. We appreciated it more because if you missed it, you missed it. Again, East Coast doesn't come on again until early in the morning. And I think that's the part I think has changed because everything's so readily available. We do things on our own time now. And I feel we've kind of lost that childhood wonder. Is there a Santa Claus? Isn't there a Santa Claus? To life with sports. And that's how I feel it's changed. Sorry, that's a little negative maybe, but that's where I am on it. But Baywood, help people make some money. We got Memorial Day coming up, Mother's Day is next weekend. People need to buy something for their moms, so they need to make some last minute bets. What are we looking at this week? Or are we looking at anything this week? Or did you take off because you already have your Mother's Day money from your bets? Which you're doing very well, by the way. I hope people are paying attention.
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. I'm just scrolling through the games quick. Should have been on this already, but it
I can
hasn't
let
been
Nick
as
rant first.
no, it's fine. It hasn't been as frequent as usual. I've been doing like one pick a week. So, let's go with
And remember, I just told people they're going to use their Mother's Day money, so don't make them lose their Mother's Day money.
well, if they're using their Mother's Day money on gambling, then we might need to readdress their life situation, but please still subscribe. I'm going to go with the Maple Leafs upset on the Panthers.
Okay.
This is NHL, by the way.
Well, no, I figured that one. Is that the only one we're looking at?
Yes, that's tomorrow.
That's fair.
Cinco de
Okay,
Mayo.
so Cinco de Drinko. There we go. I like it. I will watch part of it probably to see if your bet is correct. I will do that for you tomorrow. So tune in next week to feel if I actually watched a full hockey game by myself.
Also, to see if I took that bet, because it might change tomorrow, but that's what I'm looking at.
All right. Well, let me know before
you
I sit
have
down and
no.
watch
I'll let you know, but you have to check out our betting group on DraftKings,
What's it under on DraftKings?
Busted Coverage Podcast.
Well, I know, but it's for everybody else to figure out. I don't bet. I wouldn't know. I'm too frugal with my money. And I don't like those chances in general. I don't do it. I don't like gambling. No, it's not really gambling. You guys are usually right. It's more of a predicting the future. Nick,
Yo,
what are you ranting about this week? What is on your mind? What grinds your gears?
I was actually in a pretty good mood this week in terms of sports. Nothing really bothered me until I watched the Miami Heat play the other night. Um, when I tell you I don't even like the Heat and I felt insulted. I felt disrespected that TNT put that game on. They should have cut off early. They should have put on Everybody Loves Raymond. Call it a day. That game 4 was the definition of embarrassing. The game was over literally on the first play, where Jared Allen, who apparently is a 7-foot tall John Stockton, I don't know if you guys saw this, he had like 6 steals. The very first play, Miami Heat has the ball. They're in the half court. They try to pass it to Bam at the top of the key. He comes around. He steals the ball coast to coast. He jumps from like 2 feet inside the free throw line, yams it home. And I love me some Jared Allen. He's got a great afro. He's a great player. But damn, like Pat Riley looking like a mobster. Looked like he was going to call a hit on the whole team, with the exception of Jovic. He was the only one who did anything. I've never seen the Miami Heat put on a performance like that. It's been a long time since I could say the Miami Heat are ass. And that's what they looked like in game 4. And even in game 3, they lost by 30 plus in game 3. And then they got 50-piece nuggied in game 4. They lost by more points than Memphis did on Easter Sunday.
Just to give some quick context on this, it was 72-32 at the half. I believe 72-33. And it was 138-83 the final score.
They scored 33 points in a half as professional basketball players. And so there's 24 minutes and a half of basketball. So since I'm using a calculator, 33 divided by 24, they averaged 1.3 points per minute. And on average, you get about 1 to 2 possessions per minute. Usually, right, if you use a 24-second shot clock.
Yep.
For those of you wondering about that math, that's ass in today's NBA.
It's literally less than 1 bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awful. God awful. As Stephen A. Smith would say, blasphemous, asinine, ass a 10, and ass 11. Horrible. Hot garbage. Spoelstra's got to go. Bam Adebayo's got to go. They need a full rebuild in Miami. And hell, the only thing that Miami's got now are OnlyFans girls. That's it.
Oh.
They don't got a good basketball team no more. They're done.
Well, that is a rant. Yeah, I was watching that game with Nick, and I do have to say that I'm 100% in agreement with everything he said. It was hard to watch. I can only imagine. We have 2 friends who are Heats fans, and I actually texted both of them during the game, and they were at a loss for words. So I don't know what direction Miami's going to take, but they need a direction, because a 55-point loss on your home court in a game 4 to get swept. There ain't too many good things that came out of that game except Jovic, and sadly, he might be one of the people they end up trading out to get some pieces. So, yeah, it's been a hard game. In terms of games of the week, I'm gonna do dealer's choice. I mean, I want to go with what Matt said. Matt, remind the people of the bet you might be taking.
Toronto Maple Leafs upsetting the Florida Panthers.
I like a good upset. That is what we are going to watch. That is going to be my game of the week. I'm going to put the pressure on Matt to make that bet, whether it's good or bad, because now that's our game of the week we're all going to be watching. And that's how we're going to close it out tonight, guys. I wanted to try something a little different. We didn't really go specific sport teams while we were here. I wanted to see if this was a nice little format we could do something a little different. We all have sporting topics on our mind. When we watch TV, watch sports, have questions, bad calls are made, playoffs arrive. So we tried something a little different. And I hope you all enjoy it. I hope we liked it. I hope the conversation was at least good. And we can go from there. Quick update. Golden State is up 98-86, 12-point lead, 42 seconds left. So looks like, barring a miracle, Nick, I think that was your bet, Golden State versus Minnesota. And I think that's what the crowd will get. Edwards versus Steph Curry. But I'm going to leave it there. And I want to thank everyone for paying attention tonight, staying up to listen to our podcast, or driving to work in the car on your way somewhere, listening to our podcast, listening to us do what we love to do, talk sports, enjoy each other's company. So having said that, goodbye, good night, and have a great week.